I'm the chair of the Action Committee for the League at the state level. And all of our Action Committee are volunteers. Nobody gets paid. Our Action Committee is made up of, I'm the chair, and then we have 5 coordinators for different areas, and then they have people that are portfolio chairs under them. We now have about 20 people working on issues. So we have different people working on different aspects of what we do. We base our positions on studies that we have done at the state level, and we can also use the ones that are done at the national level to go in and advocate for certain bills. A couple things I wanted to talk about. One of them is a wonderful resource called the Oregon Legislative Information System. Our Oregon Legislative Information System gives you the opportunity to follow legislation without even going to the Capitol. In years gone by, you had to go in and pick up bills and read them and then try to figure out where everything was by using their daily schedule. But now everything's online. So you can actually sign up. If you're interested in a certain subject, you can go in and put that in to the search box, and it will bring up whatever bills are pending about that. And if you have a particular bill you want to do, you can follow that too, and you can sign up to get alerts when the bill is going to be heard in committee or if it's going to be heard on the floor of one of the chambers. So it's a really wonderful resource for people in Oregon. I did want to explain a little bit about the process. A bill comes into being because somebody's thought of an idea that they want to have happen. And so a legislator has to sponsor that idea, and they have to submit the idea to Legislative Council, who will then draft a bill. And once that bill is drafted, once the session starts, then it will go either to the Senate President or the House Speaker to be read, which is basically someone stands there and reads the little bit of relating clause at the top. If they read the whole thing, it would take forever. And then either the president or the speaker, depending on which house it's in, then assigns the bill to a committee. And the work gets done in committees. That's the important thing to know. The committees will hold hearings. Part of it will be a public hearing where they will take testimony, and then they have what's called a work session to decide if the bill is going to move out of that committee. And if it does, it comes out usually with a do pass recommendation, and then the bill goes to the House, or goes into whichever chamber, and will be voted upon. The bills cannot be amended on the floor, so any amendments have to happen in committee. So if a bill comes to the floor and something needs to change on it, it has to go back to the committee to be amended before it can come back. And then once the bill passes one chamber, it goes over to the other chamber, and the same process happens. Either the speaker or the president sends it to a committee, and then the committee holds hearings. And if the second chamber changes anything, then they have to have a conference committee, and then both chambers have to pass it again. So it's a kind of cumbersome process, but it's meant to be. The kinds of things too where you can have an influence. One of them is submitting testimony. One of the things that happens is that all written testimony goes in by email now. I mean, you can bring written testimony if you want to, but the legislature really wants everything by email. Some offices don't even have paper very much anymore. They mainly want everything online. In the interim, we have 3 times that the legislature meets in between the sessions each year. And those interim hearings are important because they are oftentimes setting up bills that will be heard during the session. So it's kind of like preliminary testimony or preliminary ideas about what someone wants to bring forward during the next session. During the interim is also a good time to get to know your senator and your representative, and that's probably the most important thing, is that that personal relationship is really important, and you're going to hear that from our other 2 speakers. But it's an exhausting experience to work at the legislature, but it's also very gratifying because we oftentimes come out with very good results.
So when I joined Nursing Mothers Council, I was trained as a peer breastfeeding counselor, and I started taking calls. And one of the calls that I got many times over was from mothers needing to go back to work, or they had already gone back to work, and they were in tears because their employer would not facilitate break time for them to go express breast milk so that they could keep nursing their baby. And so many infant nutrition choices were being driven by the flexibility of an individual employer. And after I had my heart broken on several of those calls, I started to get upset about this. And I went to one of the leaders in our group, and I said, what must be done about this? And she smiled and said, we must pass a law. Like I said, we're a very small grassroots organization. We'd never done an advocacy push quite like this before, although this issue had been moved legislatively since about 1999. What the issue lacked was a consistent person that would commit to being the face for the issue. And that is one of the things. I have three things that I learned that I wanted to share with you from my experience. And one of those things is you need consistent, passionate lobbying, and you need powerful champions, and then you need access to media. Those were kind of the three, and you need a little bit of luck. At the time, at the federal level, the CDC and DHHS were exploring ways to really inject life into grassroots community efforts around health issues, specifically like breastfeeding. And so Nursing Mothers Council was given, they became a community demonstration project. And one of the big outcomes from that was we learned all about how to connect with media, to use that to your advantage for visibility. Regarding the consistent lobbying, as I said, 2005 wasn't the first time people had taken a run at this issue. Nursing Mothers Council just decided we were going to see if someone would go down and do it, and I said I would go down and do it because I was able to. So I just started trying to learn the ropes. And in that first session, of course, we were very late to the game, but the Senate has always been friendly to this cause. And our objective was a mandate, and it was for time and a private place for a mom to be able to express her milk while she's on the job. We weren't asking for paid time, it would be unpaid time. But the real tough part was we were asking for it to be enforceable with a penalty. And that right away drew a lot of red flags with the business community, of course. And we didn't have the savvy, nor was the political climate such in 2005 that we could prevail with a mandate. But we did get our bill all the way across the finish line as an encouragement. And we resolved to come back and add to that language. We lost allies at that moment when we didn't get our mandate passed. People were pretty upset. But the thing I had learned that maybe other people didn't quite understand was once you got something in statute, you had something that you could modify. It was a huge step forward that we got this encouragement. Changing may to shall was the next step for us. And so the media followed this story. We got it across the finish line. We made a whole lot of friends and strategic partners, and we educated a lot of people that hadn't received education before. And we got the attention of one person in particular, and that was the House Minority Leader of the time, Jeff Merkley. And he, at the time, was my representative. So it was not difficult for me to get a meeting with him. And he became an immediate, ardent supporter. We'd always had champions, but now I had this new possibility of a new champion. And then he became speaker. And suddenly, I had that little bit of luck that I had someone who was a champion, and he was in a position of power and influence to put our bill, our new bill that had been modified and redrafted to incorporate all we had learned, to put it on the priority list. In the end, we did pass an enforceable mandate. It covers businesses with 25 and more employees, which is about 15%. Oregon has a lot of small businesses, right? But it covers 70% of our workforce. And so we kind of found this sweet spot where employers, it was like a low impact on employers, but a high impact for the workforce. And that pleased everyone. So this work is enormously challenging. It does require keen instinct, it does require determination, and just you have to have an intrinsic passion for it, because there's so much push and pull in the legislature. And I just kept telling people that taking care of kids is a core value. And, you know, it's not about Democrat kids or Republican kids or anything else but our kids. And by the end, lots of people were well-versed on the issue because we'd done our job. And they'd had their own experiences, and they wanted to take action. And they were waiting for someone like me to come along and fill in the picture.
The citizens have power, and they can use that power to solve, problems that in the beginning seem really impossible. I'd like to just talk to you about how you can make an impact, how you can be a part of this process in a way that is comfortable and meaningful for you. The first thing I think you need to do is to choose an issue that's important to you. Is it housing? Is it homelessness? Is it health care? Something that really speaks to you and that you feel that you would be willing to work for. Then look for a piece of legislation that embodies some of your goals. Then you want to look at who's supporting it, what coalitions are behind it, and you want to start tracking it early and make an appointment with your own representative and senators. You go to their website, you get their telephone number. You do two things. You write an email asking for an appointment, and you make a call to the staff asking for an appointment. And staff will tell you the best way to make an appointment. So when you get this appointment, what do you do then? First off, I think that you need to face the fact that you're going to have 10 or 15 minutes. You can't count on an hour, so you don't want to fool around, and you want to have clearly in your mind what 2 or 3 things you want to say. And you don't need to be really technical about the legislation. You want to tell why it's important to you. And if you have a little story about somebody that this had impacted, then that's great. Go ahead and tell your story, but figure out how you're going to get what you have to say in less than 10 minutes, because you want to give them time to respond to you. And also another good technique is to, after you get your appointment, is to go back to your coalition and ask for an expert to go with you, so that you are constituent. They gave you the appointment because you're a constituent, but you bring an expert with you, and usually you can get somebody from the coalition to go with you, so that you have somebody who knows the nuts and bolts of the legislation, is ready to respond. So, about 7 minutes into the time, you want to begin to ask their opinion. What do you think about this? Do you think what do you think the chances of this passing? Who do you think will be for it? What are the opponents? What are the things that are against this? And then you want to wrap up. You don't want to be too long. And again, being sincere, being yourself, not trying to pretend you know more than you are, not trying to be too technical. And then also at the end, you ask their advice about how can we support you? How can we help move this forward? Then as time goes on, you're going to find out which committee this is going to go to. You're going to try to get an appointment with the chair of that committee, go through the same process. Always bring a piece of paper with you. It's either your letter that you've written or it's a fact sheet from the coalition. And your personal sincerity, your passion, and your reasons for supporting this are really important to that legislator. And also develop a relationship with the staff, because you may want to call back and ask staff, did I understand this right? When is it going to come up for a hearing? Now, when it's set for a hearing, that's the time when you want to be sure that you make contact with the committee members. And you can just go to the Capitol, walk to each of their offices and say, I know this is coming up for a hearing on Thursday, and I want you to know that we strongly support it, and here's the fact sheet about it. And if you have any questions, if your representative has any questions, we'd be really happy to do research and respond to questions that you might have. Then you can submit testimony. If you decide to testify in person, then your testimony will have been submitted. You go in and sign up, and you can, and when they call you, you can go up, and you don't have to read your testimony. You can say, again, in a very sincere way, this is why I think this is really important. This is why we really appreciate the support we've already gotten, and this is why we think it's really essential for the state to get this passed. And always be really polite and respectful to staff and to the legislators. You may disagree really strongly with what they have to say. You may really be internally just angry that they're taking this viewpoint. But these are very hardworking people. And if you show disrespect or anger toward them, then you're making enemy unnecessarily.